Good morning. Today we are doing the Uddhav Gita, and this is a new chapter. Yesterday we ended the earlier chapter, chapter 11. So today we are doing the chapter 12. Now, this is more about how distinctions happened in the society from the Genesis, from the beginning of time, from the first Yuga downwards till today, how the changes have been effected. Now, whatever is being said in the Uddhav Gita right now, you have to consider it from the perspective of how these caste systems came into the picture. What is the original meaning of the caste? What was the meaning during the time of Krishna, and what is the meaning of the caste right now? Actually, nothing has changed, but today caste is a no word. You are not supposed to say this word at all. It is kind of a language which nobody would want to speak. But since it is there in these scriptures, I definitely will give you a run through of what exactly they mean. So we are doing a new chapter, chapter 12 from the Uddhav Gita, the last message of Sri Krishna. The first few verses we will do fast. Uddhava said, "Thou hast already spoken of religion which makes for devotion to thee, and is meant for all human beings, with or without the observances of caste and order of life. Please tell me, O lotus eyed one, how by practicing that religion for himself a man may attain to devotion to thee." Religion is a binding block for most of the citizens of this world. You will find that religion divides the entire countries, states, people, and it's a taboo subject because those who are atheist, agnostic, they believe that religion is the cause of all the misery that is there in this world. It's the same thing like a knife or a sword. It can be a deterrent, but if it is used in an offensive way, it can definitely cause problems. Likewise, religion has to be used for the purpose of going on the path of devotion. Religion should not be used for the purpose of spreading hatred towards other people. But that is what is happening today because of certain divisive forces. We are not discussing those divisive forces. We are trying to understand over here how is it that religion helped the entire world in getting us towards our dear Lord in the form of devotion to Him. So Uddhava is talking to Krishna and he is saying that you have already spoken of religion. Actually, religion was already discussed previously. But religion is the pathway to devotion. This we have discussed, this you had already told me. There are castes and orders in life. There are different castes and orders in life. You can deny them to the end of this earth, but they are going to be there. You just can't have everybody ruling the country, correct? There will be definitely a leader, a person who leads others, and there will be followers. So, this kind of distinction has to be there for work to get done, for anything to move around. There will always be a sun, there will be other planetary system, that's the entire planets. Now, everybody can't be the sun, isn't it? In the same way, everybody can't be the teacher. There is one teacher, there are other students. Correct? A teacher is useless if there are no students, and students are useless if they don't have anybody to teach. No teacher. So this is how you got to see it in terms of how this caste and division in the society happened. So he says, by practicing that religion, how is it that it is possible to attain devotion to you? So he is going to ask a couple of more questions. So let us see. Verse 3 and 4 says, from chapter 12 of the Uddhav Gita, the supreme and blissful religion which thou, O mighty arm Lord, O Madhava, didst one expound, so it is said to Brahma in thy swan form, has now, O queller of foes, almost ceased to be in the mortal world, owing to the great passage of time, even though it was once inculcated. The religion which was taught in the beginning of time, that religion doesn't exist anymore. You will find that religion today has divided everybody. Just a few days ago, in a very controversial place called Ayodhya, there used to be a mosque and got demolished. And then the Supreme Court gave a judgment that this particular land will belong to, creating that particular temple for the Hindus. Now, they started digging over there. And when they started digging over there, they found a lot of slabs and old artifacts over there. These were dating quite, of, maybe thousands of years ago. The moment the people said that they belong to the Hindu religion, immediately the Buddhists came into the picture and they said, no, this belongs to us. So, this is the problem with the world. Everybody thinks that it is their own. Now, how does a person do this kind of a distinction? I was giving an example that in the Middle East, there is a religion today. There was a religion yesterday, and there was one before that as well in the same place. So, whose land is it? Who is the rulers? What exactly has happened? Nobody can say. So, today there is so much of disruption that is going on in this world. So, can you say that originally it belonged to Jews and then the Christians? You can't say those words also, because this land is the land. It is God given. Distinctions have been made. So, one of my disciples asked me this question, why is it so? So, I gave him an answer. You can just think about it yourself. I said, let us say you are from a distant planetary system. You're like Mr. Spock coming from some other planet. And when you are seeing the Earth from far, maybe at the edge of our solar system, you are watching the Earth, it looks like a small dot. And there are other dots around. That means there is Mercury, right? There is Venus, Mars, Jupiter. So many other planets are there, plus there is an asteroid belt. You will just say it is just a small dot. And then you come closer. You are going in your spacecraft and you are coming closer. You have crossed the asteroid belt and you will see that particular dot has become bigger. It looks like a blue dot. And let us say there is a person who has come from there. How will you describe that person? So Mr. Spock will look at that particular person and say, he is an earthling. All right? So he is an earthling. Now he comes still closer. Now he is observing through his telescope this planet, Earth. And he sees that on the Earth there is water and there is land. So he will say, oh, you must be a creature from the land. So you are a land-based creature because you are walking, you are talking. So the sea-based creatures, that is the water-based creatures might be swimming in it. So they may not be able to breathe. Let us assume that Spock has enough knowledge, okay? So then he comes still closer. And then he asks, what is this? So he says, this is Asia. The land which is there, he says, this is Asia. This is Americas. This is Australia. That is Africa. Very good. So everything in this place is Asia. So any person from that particular place, a human being from that place will be called an Asian. Similarly, if you go to the Americas, oh, he's an American from North or South America, don't bother about it. He's an American. By the way, the term America came into the picture in a very strange manner. The first explorer was different for the Americas. The one who charted it out, his name was Amerigo Vespucci. So his name was given to this continent, Americas. Now when we say America, everybody thinks it is United States of America. It is North and South. Amerigo Vespucci discovered Americas. So let us say, oh, he is an American. He may be from Chile also, doesn't matter. He may be from Argentina also. We'll come to that. So somebody from this side is called an Asian, somebody from that side is called an American. And then Mr. Spock is bringing his aircraft still closer. So as he comes still closer, he will say, oh, this is North America, this is South America. And on this Asian front also, there are different people. So he'll ask this Earthling, what is this? So he says that is Canada, that is America, the United States, and there is Mexico, and down there is Argentina, Brazil, and all those places. And on this side, there is a Russia, there is a China, there is India, and all that. Oh, that means there are differences here. So then what happens? So there is no Asian over there. There is a Russian, there is a Chinese, there is an Indian, and then you come still closer. And then you will find that in United States, there are different states. Likewise in Canada, likewise in India and Russia and China. So he will ask, oh, the people from this place are called by a certain name. Yes, of course. They're the East Coast and the West Coast. Okay, very good. And in India, if he looks at India, oh, he's from Maharashtra, he's from Calcutta, West Bengal. He's from Kashmir in the north and maybe Chennai, what do you call it, Madras, Tamil Nadu in the south. Oh, that means there are still descriptions over there, distinctions are there. Now he comes still closer. He brings his aircraft still closer, or maybe his telescope still. Oh, this is the state of Maharashtra. Very good. This is Karnataka. Very good. So what is the person who is staying over there called? He will say he's a Mumbaikar. He's from Bombay, Mumbai. And this person is from Bangalorean, Bangalore. Why is that? And then in Bangalore or in Mumbai, I am from the north. He is a South Indian. So did you see the problem that happens when a human being goes outwards, forgetting the God within? He makes distinctions like this by color, caste, whatever you name it. places. In Maharashtra, they will say, I am from Mumbai. Other fellow will say, I am from Pune. My Marathi is greater than your Marathi. You talk all nonsensical Marathi. He will tell the Mumbaikar like that. The Mysorean will say to the Bangalorean, he says, oh, you don't understand Kannada at all. Did you get this? This distinction happens. And in United States itself, he is black, he is white, he's from Mexico. My ancestors are from Spain and Germany and this and that. What nonsense is this? Can you understand? These distinctions come about because human beings try to go too outwards. They want to make this difference. So I hope you got this answer. Krishna is telling Arjuna that during that particular time this thing has happened, and Uddhava is actually saying this to Krishna. Krishna, during the olden times, I believe everything was one. And today there is so many differences that have happened. He says, earlier when you came as a swan-like form, that time everything was so beautiful. There was no distinction. So today, this is a great passage of time. All this change has happened in the mortal world. So we move to the next verse. So this is chapter 12, verse 5. O Achyuta, there is no other teacher, originator, or defender of religion on earth than you. No, not even the court of Brahma, where the sciences are present in visible form. So Uddhava is telling Krishna, you are the greatest teacher of all. And there is no other teacher who can be as great as you. I know Brahmaji is the one who started this. But Brahmaji's court also doesn't have anybody who can explain this whole thing to me. All the scriptures that are there, which have originated from the past. Who would be the best teacher of all these scriptures? Think about it. Can anybody who is called a created being actually tell us what the scriptures contain? Can a human being who is today an average teacher tell everybody what these scriptures mean? Nobody. The only person who can give an explanation to the scriptures will be you, Krishna. You are the one who originated. Everything came from. You are the defender of religion also. So, you are the greatest of the teachers. So, please explain these things to me. I know that Brahma has got everything embedded inside of him, including all the sciences. They come from Brahmaji. I know that. But Brahma can never be a great teacher. You are the greatest, so explain this to me. Verse 6 from chapter 12, the Uddhav Gita, O slayer of Madhu, when thou, the originator, defender, expounder of it, will leave the earth, religion too will die. Who, O Lord, will then explain it? So Uddhava is asking Krishna. You see, Krishna was dying. Remember, these are his last words. So he is saying, Uddhava is saying to Krishna, Krishna, if you don't explain these words to us today, how will this world know exactly what they mean? What is the meaning of these different castes and creed and religion and so on and so forth? Can you please give us this explanation? It is very important to understand this. So be kind enough to give me the answer. 7. Therefore, O Lord, who knows all religion, please describe to me which of us is fit for the religion which makes for devotion to thee, and how he is to practice it. So he is telling Krishna, first and foremost, somebody has to be actually given the charge of practicing this religion, which means that person should be the knower of truth. It is only if that person is the knower of truth, which you are the expounder of, which you are going to expose just now. This world needs this religion, the one which is the true understanding. The true understanding is the blue dot. See? The true understanding is not that I am a Hindu, you are a Christian, and you are a Muslim. No, that is not the answer. This is a distinction that is being made. Everybody is an earthling. Tomorrow, if some other planet tries to harm our planet, naturally we all have to get together. But because we are making those differences between everybody, this is your land, this is my land. So there are so many issues going on. You come from this caste, I come from this caste. There is a problem there. So he is saying, Uddhava is telling Krishna, can you please give us a correct understanding so that there will be somebody who will carry this flag forward and give an answer today so that we can then give it to the world. So verse 8 says from Uddhav Gita chapter 12, thus Shuka said. Now remember, Sukdev Goswami is saying these words. Shuka said, thus asked by his own foremost servant, the Lord Hari was pleased and described the time-honored religion for the good of men. So Sukdev Goswami is telling Parikshit, when this question was raised by Uddhava to Krishna, Krishna is now going to give the answer. This is Uddhav Gita chapter 12 verse 9, the last message of Sri Krishna. The Lord said, this question of yours, O Uddhava, is righteous, for it will promote the highest good of men who observe the duties of caste and order of life. Learn that religion of me. So here Krishna is giving a very sweet explanation. He says, whatever questions that you have asked are dharmic in nature, are righteous in nature. They are very good questions. And because they will promote the highest good in mankind, so that people will not have division amongst themselves, I am going to give you an understanding of the subject. What exactly is the subject? Why is it that a person has been given that specific body? Why that person has been given a specific position or place in that body, in this entire universe? And why is it that he needs to do the job which he is supposed to do? Everybody has been given a nature. Everybody has been given a body. Now, why is that given to that person? And this question of yours, Uddhava, is very important. Now I am going to answer that to you. So, Krishna is now starting his explanation. He says, this is chapter 12, verse 9 from Uddhav Gita. The Lord said, this question of yours, O Uddhava, is righteous, for it will promote the highest good of men who observe the duties of caste and order of life. Learn that religion from me. Verse 10 says, in the beginning, in the Krita or Satyuga, man had but one caste, which is known as the Hamsa. People attained the consummation of their desires from their very birth, and hence the age was called Krita, which means achieved. So, let us go back at the beginning. Krishna is telling Uddhava, he says, at the beginning of time, everybody was born perfect. If you go into the Bible also, you will find that the first human being lived for thousands of years. In our scriptures also it is written that a human being could live for thousands of years because he was a Hamsa. What is the meaning of the word Hamsa? Hamsa means a swan. A swan is a creature, it's a bird. If you give him a bowl of milk, from his mouth comes a particular liquid which will curdle the milk. It's a kind of an acid which curdles the milk. After the milk is curdled, it only eats the solid and leaves the water over there. You know how cheese is made, isn't it? You know how paneer is made. It's the same way. So you can separate the water and separate the solids. The liquids and the solids can be separated. So in olden times, all these people who were born were called Hamsas. Hamsas means people who can understand the truth from the unreal. They know the real from the unreal. They were perfect beings. They had knowledge, understanding, and perfection in them. So in the beginning, in the Krita Yuga or Sat Yuga, Sat Yuga means the Yuga of truth. Krita means achieved. They have already achieved everything. Just this person was called the Hamsa because if he thought, okay, just by thinking, the process of thinking, he could create objects in nature. Let us say he is sitting over here and he is thinking that I want to eat a certain thing. That particular dish is available only in South America. He sits over here and thinks about it. Suddenly the dish will appear in front of that person. Magically. So can you understand this? He said that just now I want to travel. Can I have the best horse? And he will get the horse. So any tool that he wanted, anything that he wanted, all his desires were fulfilled. How? He was the perfect person over there. He was a perfect being. So naturally, he was an accomplished one. There was nothing left for him to accomplish. See, he had everything for himself. He could achieve anything. So such a kind of a person. The people who stayed in the first yuga were perfect beings. They were called Hamsas. And their knowledge was absolutely perfect. There was no contamination anywhere. There was no caste, creed, religion, nothing, nothing, nothing. They were just one. So this is the beginning. Verse 11 from chapter 12 from the Uddhav Gita. In that primeval age, Om was the Veda and I was religion in the form of a bull. The people of that age who were pure and given to contemplation used to reflect on me, the pure one. During this yuga, that is the first yuga, Krita Yuga, that is the achieved yuga or accomplished one, Sat Yuga. What was the Veda? Just the word Om was the Veda. saying the word Om was sufficient. All knowledge was inside that sphere called Om. Today, how many distinctions are there? Quite a lot. I will give you the understanding from that perspective also. Long, long ago, there were subjects which people said, oh, this is a subject called maths, mathematics. This is a subject called science. All sciences were one, all mathematics was one only. Slowly, as time went by, the sciences broke down into individual sciences. There was a subject called physics, chemistry, and biology. Then, still further down, it was broken up. Theoretical physics, this physics, that physics, so many forms of chemistry, organic, inorganic, you name it. And in mathematics, so many distinctions came in the way. There were geometry, trigonometry, calculus, statistics. Oh my God, so many distinctions came. Similarly, biology broke down further. It became wider and wider. Then what happened? Subjects which we had never even thought of came into the picture. Now, genetics. And in, say, medical field, there is still distinctions. Earlier, I could go to a dentist. Before that, I could go to a general physician. Today, I can't go to a general physician. I have to go to a specialist. Even in that, there is still further specialization. Orthodontist and God knows all kinds of things. It's become too complicated today. Likewise, in physics, chemistry, also too many complications. New subjects which nobody had ever heard of came into existence. Why? They are imaginary subjects, but they are very, very prominent today. All right? Subjects like psychology. Who knew about psychology? We thought psychology is one subject only. I mean, it's a part and parcel of some science, God knows. But no, in that there were further distinctions. So did you understand what is being said over here? The world became more and more diversified. If I say that I am a specialist in this field, I say that I am a religious teacher. No, you are a spiritual teacher. I am from this particular religion. Yeah, you are from this religion, but you are teaching this only. Hinduism, the first question, even in spirituality, that is asked to me, do you teach yoga, meditation? From what point of view do you think yoga and meditation is connected to religion? I have no idea. The term yoga is a misnomer. Yoga means union with God. And today, if I say I am learning yoga, but I am an atheist, what do you mean by you are learning yoga and yet you are an atheist? You are an idiot. Why? Yoga means union with God. How can you be an atheist? Got the answer? That is the reason why so many schools in this world say, you disassociate religion from yoga. They got to get their heads examined. How can you disassociate? Actually, the term yoga, I told you, is body exercises which all those fancy women and men do, wearing fancy clothes. I mean, think about it. In olden times, you thought that they were going to wear all those body hugging clothes to do exercise. But that is what has happened today. That is not yoga. Okay, that is bhoga. Bhoga means enjoyment. You look at all those beautiful bodies and enjoy. Nothing enters over here. No brains. It's no brain kind of a thing. You'll find that all the stupid people in this world, they will do all kinds of bending backward, forward, this, they, I don't know what else stuff that they do. And it has nothing to do with union with God. Where is God in that? I can only see a devil sitting in front of me or doing all kinds of body exercise. But that is the truth. It is enticement. So is Krishna saying over here something very strange. He says, you see, all these distinctions came about. Actually, there was no religion at that time. The religion was Om. You may say it is happening because nobody knew the language. Who told you nobody knew the language? They could read each other's mind telepathically. Nobody needed to speak at that time. They didn't require cell phones. Oh, I am going to call up my brother in America. Nothing like that. They could communicate. They didn't have any language. The religion by itself was called Om. You just say Om. Maybe just hum it. So there was no word as such. And then he says, the religion was in the form of a bull. It's an example. Please understand, when he gives these kind of examples, these examples are to be understood from a particular perspective. It is a four-legged creature, the bull. So during the first yuga, this bull had all the four legs intact. All right. Everybody was pure and given to contemplation. Today, you tell a person to contemplate, the person will say, I can't, I can't, because my mind is going out. I keep on getting so many thoughts and I get so much engrossed in this world. What are you talking? What is there to think about? Use that little bit of brain that you have and think. If you are going to dwell in the past, where is your future going to be? You are going to be nowhere. Keep on dwelling in nonsensical subjects. My father disowned me. He didn't give me the property. Blah, blah, blah. Goes on for a lifetime. These kind of stupid acts happen. And they should be avoided. Got the answer? So here, the bull was standing on four legs. People of this age were very pure. They were not given to any kind of thinking, nonsensical thinking. They were not thinking, tomorrow what will I do? Tomorrow how the world is going to be. Never thought like that. They could just think. You see in the movies and all, you see all those people. Have you seen? They do like this. They will say some mantra and one weapon will come in their hand. I'm sure you have seen that magic happening, no? In movies. In real life, it doesn't happen. That was happening in the first yuga. They knew how to create objects. After that, everything went for a toss. So he says, I am the pure one in that case. All right. So we move to the next verse, verse 12 from chapter 12 of the Uddhav Gita. At the beginning of the Treta Yuga, that is the second yuga. O noble soul, the science of Vedas appeared from my heart through the agency of the prana. Out of that, I became the sacrifice, which is threefold adjuncts. At the beginning of that particular yuga, that is the second one. It's called the Treta Yuga. Who is famous in Treta Yuga? Shri Ram. Isn't it Shri Ram, Sita, Lakshman? Very famous. So the second yuga came into the picture. Why did the second yuga come into the picture? There is a very deeper story over there. A contamination happened amongst people. Those who are knowledgeable and those who are not meant for that purpose got contaminated. It is like today, if I cross, a mule, a donkey, with a horse, what will I get? Do you think I'll get a pure breed? Think. I want you to think very carefully. I'm going to get a crossbreed. What is a crossbreed? Say a black man is marrying a white woman, or a white man is marrying a black woman. How are their children going to be? Genetically also they will be different. Physically also they will be different. Don't you think so? If I have two different breeds of dogs, and if I breed them together, you know what's going to happen, isn't it? Exactly like that. I'm going to get a crossbreed. Similarly, vegetables. Okay. The purple color cabbage. I knew only green color cabbage. And suddenly I see a purple color cabbage. It is nothing but crossbreeding. One color has been put in another. And then the new subject came into the picture called genetics. Genetically modified. So if there is a genetically modified person, please understand he is going to have a very strange features. Right? People who have oriental features, Chinese or all that. And imagine there is one European. They get married. What is their next children are going to be looking like? Naturally, it's going to be different. So in the Treta Yuga, the second Yuga, this happened. One of the greatest sages of all times. So this particular sage, his name was Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra and another friend of his, Jamdagini. These guys, they are sages, by the way. They were captured by a different class of people. Now, Vishwamitra, he was a fair-skinned north, coming from the north. He was called the Aryan race. Now, he fell in love with the king of this particular race called the Dasyus. Black, dark, ugly looking creatures. They had dark skin, they had very distorted faces, the bodies, and they were very short. So he had a daughter. The Dasyu king had a daughter, and Vishwamitra fell in love with her. Now he is from the north, very fair and all that, and here is from the south. You think about it, what would have happened? Remember, Vishwamitra was a king. Later on, he became a sage and a saint. That's a different story. Okay. Now, both these guys, they had one guru. His name was Agastya Muni. Now, Agastya Muni, he was an angry sage. Angry. You understand? Very angry. Why? Because of this kind of contamination, everybody. Why should a person from here fall in love with a person from there? So he was a very angry guy. So it so happened that these two young boys, they were 8 or 9 years old. Who? Vishwamitra and Jamdagini. They were 8 or 9 years old, very young guys. Naturally, when you are very young, when you see one very beautiful woman, a very nicely good looking woman, these two young boys, they fell in love with one very great sage kind of a woman. She was their teacher, by the way, before they met this Agastya Muni. Her name was Lopamudra. The story, this is going on. Now, Lopamudra was so pretty, and these two young boys are falling in love with their teacher. Have you not heard these kind of stories before? Young boys falling in love with their old teacher. She was not too old, by the way. She was in her 20s, early 20s. But she was a great person. Why? Because she was the one who was going to unite these north and the south. Get it? Lopamudra was a sage who wanted to unite the north and the south, the fair skinned people with the dark skinned people. She said everything has come from God, one God only. Why are you fighting amongst each other? So, this was the problem. Now, these two young boys, when they meet and then they propose to her, their teacher, by the way, they went and proposed to her. So she said, "You don't understand. You fellows are so young. Let me think about your proposal in the future." So the story goes that these boys, they learn a lot of martial arts and other arts from her, Lopamudra. Then they are sent to this other sage in the south. He is not actually in the south, somewhere here only, Karnataka, slightly north of Karnataka. So he was sent over there, these two boys. Now, these guys, instead of learning from their sage master, new master whose name was Agastya Muni, these guys were very naughty guys, very naughty fellows. And they started doing matchmaking. I mean, just imagine. They are thinking that, you see, we don't get to marry this beautiful woman, so let our teacher, the new teacher, Agastya Muni, get married to her. So, I'm just giving you the story for a reason. The reason is this: when Vishwamitra, who was captured by the Dasyus clan from the south, they completely changed his method of thinking. Remember, the first thought came from his first teacher, Lopamudra. She wanted to unite the kingdoms. And this is the beginning where the caste, creed, religion went out of the window. Got it? And this was detested, not liked by any of these sages. They said, you are not supposed to. Please understand one thing. These sages, at that time, they were great sages like Vashishta Muni also. Vashishta, Agastya, all these were great munis. They said, you can't do this kind of a thing. You can't get married to another girl from another caste, another, creed or whatever. But this boy was adamant. And you know what happens. But actually, there is a very deeper story in that. You know what is the story? It was programmed to happen like that by the dear Lord. Because the next yuga had to come into the picture. Next yuga. It has to come into the picture and then things have to change. Got the answer? And that is the reason why this whole thing had to move forward. I am giving you a story from the, some of the old books. Don't bother so much about it. But this is the way in which the whole world was doing. When people took over some land, let us say the Mongols came in India. All right? You know the Mongols, isn't it? Genghis Khan and all that. He captured land after land after land. He killed all the men over there, captured all the women. The children were born to these women. What will they be called? They were half Mongols, isn't it? Half, I don't know what Indians we call them, or Asian, and Mongols. And then there were different civilizations, from different places. Alexander came with his gang over here, and then so many others. The Islamic revolution happened over here, the Muslims came, and then the Britishers came, and God knows. So India is like a mess. Just like America is a bigger mess, nobody knows anything. People think that they come from some great breeds. You go to Europe also, it's the same thing. There was a stupid war fought just because people thought I am an Aryan race. What Aryan race? Everybody is having different set of genes. When you do the genetic study, you will come to know how this crossbreeding happened here, there, here, there, here, there. So, and that is called progress. So here Krishna is explaining this very nicely. At the beginning of the Treta Yuga, the science of Veda appeared. That means what? The Vedas broke down further. So now that will give you an understanding. There was only one Ved before. It was called Om. Then Om became number of different scriptures. That is a whole load of them. Now that whole load cannot be captured by a stupid mind like ours. Understand this. Human beings don't have that capacity like they had in Satyuga. Correct? Brain, I think 1/1000th less than those fellows. So how will we break down the Vedas and the scriptures? There is no way of knowing how this can be broken down. I mean, how you can understand them. So this yuga, in the Treta Yuga, the first breakdown happened of the Vedas itself. That's what Krishna is saying. The science of Vedas appeared from my heart. Whose heart? Who is this my? The manifest divinity. He said, today the people in this world have less understanding. So I have to give them only specialized knowledge. So he broke down the Vedas into 4. Right? So now from the 4, then we can then further break it down. So that you take only a small piece of it. You're like an ant. You can't carry the whole sugar hill. You have to carry one only small grain. It's like that. So you can only carry this much of knowledge. So as we progressed further from Treta to Dwapara to Kali Yuga, our knowledge became so less, understanding became so less, that today if you look at a person who is doing engineering and ask him a question related to history, he will look at you blank. What are you saying? Who was Chandragupta Maurya? I don't know. Got it? Because that person has no knowledge. Now if you take one person who is used to doing, say, theoretical physics, and I ask him, can you please explain what is marketing? No, nothing works over there. Yeah, he will say, I will see it in Wikipedia or some such, or maybe I'll try to understand from there. But actually, that person has only specialized knowledge, this much only. Now do you understand in today's Yuga why people are so specialized? Because we don't have the capacity of those people from the Satyuga. We don't even have capacities of the people from the Treta Yuga. So in the Treta Yuga, these Vedas broke down. They broke down into 4 distinctions. Through the agency of prana. So prana. Prana means life force. So he says, me, Krishna. What I did was, from my breath, I gave you all these 4 distinctions in the Vedas itself. They appeared. Out of that came sacrifice and the 3-fold adjuncts. What came out of the Vedas? Sacrifices. Because you don't understand, so I have to now give you further explanation to it. So I will break it down into sacrifice. What is a sacrifice? Give some offering. Okay, then you get something out of it. Give something to get something. Transactional. So today, if I have to understand a particular subject, I have to go to some college or university or something like that. I have to pay huge fees so that I can sit amongst a few people and learn the subject And then I become an expert in that subject and I become a duffer in all other subjects. Because my knowledge is now only limited to one aspect in that whole thing, for which I have paid through my nose for it. Remember that. For becoming what? A specialist? So this is the problem. And how much money does a person have to pay to become a specialist? Quite a lot. Don't you think it is called sacrifice? Yes. You have to sacrifice your time, money, energy, everything. Even the little brain of yours, which is not even 1 gram worth, you are going to sacrifice for that stupid place. And you will get some prize of one particular kind, or maybe one certificate of one kind, and the rest of the knowledge in the world goes out of the window. So this is what happened. So out of that, I became the sacrifice. Then I became distinct as a sacrifice. You got the understanding of the word. And the threefold adjuncts. Now, what is this threefold adjuncts? Let us look at it. One, the first adjunct would be called as the written word. Written word. Today, when you are listening to podcasts or you are seeing YouTube videos, do you know how it is done? There is a written word which is called a script. There is somebody who is enacting the script, isn't it? Somebody is saying that script. He'll read it and I'll say it. And there is a third person who is listening to it, or who is seeing it on YouTube, or who is seeing it in the feature film, in front of me. Nice picture. So did you get this? These are the three things which are there. Three adjuncts. One which is in the form of a book, a written word, or a document, or something like that, specific. Second one is the enactor, the one who is going to enact it, say it, do it, perform it. And then the third one is the one who is the seer, the one who sees it, one who experiences it, one who is taking part by getting involved in it. I'll give you the whole thing once again. There is a recipe for making certain things. A recipe. The second person is the one who is called a chef, the one who creates that recipe. So this is written word, or maybe this is knowledge. Knowledge gets converted by this person who is a cook or a chef or whatever. And then there is a third person who is going to enjoy it, isn't it? So then this whole distinction happens. So this is the way in these threefold adjuncts work. So threefold adjuncts over here can be described like this. There are three things involved in everything. So even while doing the sacrifice, there are three things involved. One is the one who prepares the sacrifice. Now we'll come back to the basic term sacrifice. So he prepares the sacrifice. Second one is the one who is going to say those words. And the third one is the guy who is going to do all the oblations, pouring those things. Correct? Got the answer? So this is how the distinctions happen. So I hope you understood up to this verse. Next time we will do the next verse 13 onwards. All right? So I will take your leave and I will see you all in the coming week. You take care. You have a great day. Be safe. Bye.